Mm-hmm.
All right, Uncle Dick.
Hi.
Um, tell me about how it was to grow up during the Great Depression.
How it was in the Great Depression?
Yes.
Well, for myself now, I was very young during the Great Depression, but I know what my folks went through, you know.
Yeah.
But for the kids that were in my neighborhood, there were some people there that didn't have enough to eat. And we were very fortunate. We always had enough to eat. And we used to have in the back what they called Victory Gardens in the war.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm just gonna put this up here.
during War II, well, we had victory. Well, we had gardens, and then there were a lot of poor people that were on the railroads. They called them bums, but they were just people looking for work.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd come around and they always had a jelly sandwich when they stopped at our house in St. Joe.
Was it this house?
Huh?
Was it this house?
Well, this was one of the houses, yeah. See, we were living in town at that time, and this was the first house out of town. Well, anyway, we used to feed these people that would come along, and they were having a tough time, and so was everybody else. They were losing their homes, they were losing their businesses, and a little story about my folks, and they had a drugstore downtown in that building.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was built by my grandfather and great grandfather. Anyway, they were having a tough time, and they had to make a payment. And as my dad was walking down to the bank, the guy saw him coming and locked the door so he couldn't make the payment.
Well,
so he'd be able to take over the building.
Mm.
So a lot of that stuff was going on. But he brought the sheriff there to open up the door. So things like that. But things were, I think people, there were more families and they knew how to work together. And the thing that saved it was because there were a lot of families and they all stuck together. And the whole family would be in there. The grandpa and the grandma and the aunts and uncles would all be living in the house that we were living in. Yeah. So that's about as much about the Depression that I know. Yeah. I don't know if it's
Do you have any specific memories?
Well,
besides the one you've told me
yeah,
about?
all right. I knocked over, well, we were playing ball, and I threw a pitch and it got too wide, and it hit 2 jugs of milk in back of this place. Now, they could not afford that. So the lady came out and said, Dick, that's all we have. And so I ran home and I told my folks, well, we had a bunch of change there. So I got the change and we went up to the store, her daughter and myself, and we went and bought some milk so they'd have some milk. Things were kind of tough along those lines.
Tell me about the hobo camp.
All right, the hobo camp was at the end of the ravine that is here. If you go towards the lake from here, there's a pond, there was a pond, and that's where they were, right at the railroad tracks. So when we were kids, we used to, my grandma always baked on a Saturday, and they always had a lot of jelly because we had grapes in the back here. In the back of this place, there were grapes, and we'd make grape jam and grape jelly, and always had a lot of jelly and always had a lot of bread. So my buddy and I, we would take the bread and jam, make sandwiches out of them, and then we'd bring them to the hobo camp that was down there. And they were so happy to get it, and they'd share their mulligan stew with us that they were making up. And then they jump on the railroad, on the cars, and get in these cars that didn't have or were open, and then they'd go to Detroit or wherever they wanted to go on the railroads, looking for work. They weren't really hobos. They were just men looking for work. And they couldn't find it where they were at, and so they would go into the bigger cities, a lot of them, and just ride the train.
Ride the rails.
Ride the rails, that's right, yeah. So anyway, when we were kids, we were never, and then they always knew, they had a little mark that they made on the post out in front of our house in St. Joe. And that let them know that they could always get a jelly sandwich or something to eat. Yeah. And we'd have a lot of so-called hobos, but they were just people that were looking for work, and they would do it if you had a few cents that you extra, we would hire them and ask them to do something, So anyway, that's as much as I can tell you about the Depression.
Well, wonderful. Thank you
Yeah,
so much, and I'm glad I have that on. I recorded that.
you did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just so we could have a record of it.
Yeah. Well, now this house, just one little thing. My great-grandfather, Leffler, was his name, and grandfather, had a home right across the ravine from where we're at right now. And then my other great-grandfather here, Mueller, built this house. But he bought 20 acres from Grandpa Leffler, and Grandpa Mueller here built the house that we're in, and you're standing in it right now. In 1900. Took him 3 years to build this house.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if that is anything, but...
Yeah, it's interesting, don't worry. You're not...
This is... Well, actually, there were 40 acres that were developed by the Leffler family. But prior to that, do you know the stadium over here?
Yeah.
Called Dickinson Stadium?
Yeah.
That's who they bought the property from.
I see.
Okay. Anyway, you saw the pictures of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a picture of the house?
I'm sure we do somewhere.
Okay. I just wondered. 'Cause I got something for you. I'll show you.
Okay.
All right. All right. So, I love you.
I love you too, Uncle Dick.
Okay.
Thank you for talking about this.
Yeah. All right.
I'm glad you remember so much about it.
I wish I could tell you more, but that was. But it never really affected me. Because I've always had something to eat. And my family. Because we had the drugstore there and a restaurant.